Okay, so you want to own a truck stop, not a gas station, a glowing city beside an interstate. 40 acres of sodium light at 2 in the morning, diesel lanes humming, a row of chrome grills nosed up against the pumps, the smell of fried chicken and rain on asphalt, and 100 trucks sleeping in neat rows behind the building. Everything that moves in this country eventually stops here, and every driver walks past your register. That's the picture. Then you work the fuel desk one Tuesday overnight, and by sunrise the picture has a hole in it. A driver just pumped 118 gallons of diesel, over $400, and after the wholesale cost and the card processor took their cuts, you kept somewhere between $12 and $15. The man in line behind him bought a coffee, a sandwich, and a shower, and made you nearly as much. The convenience and fuel business moves $817.5 billion a year, and the pumps out front earn pocket change. So here's the question the whole thing turns on. If a truck stop keeps pennies on its headline product, why did Warren Buffett spend north of $13 billion buying a chain of them? The answer has almost nothing to do with the diesel itself. Start with what a truck stop actually is, because it is not one business, it's three. And they share a parking lot the way a shark and a goldfish share an ocean. Door number one is the pumper, an industry term from actual SEC filings, meaning a bare-bones diesel stop. Fuel islands, a cashier, maybe a vending machine. Pumpers compete on one variable, the price on the sign, which means they live and die by a margin measured in cents. The vending machine inside out earns the pumps per square foot by a mile. Door number two is the full-service travel center, the small city. Diesel lanes on one side, car pumps on the other, a convenience store, hot food, showers, laundry, and acres of overnight parking. Regulatory filings from the 1990s already described this model as having a diversity of revenue sources. Corporate language for a simple truth: the fuel brings the truck and the building does the earning. Door number three is the network. Pilot, Loves, TA. Hundreds of locations wired together by loyalty programs and fleet contracts, where no single site matters and the entire game is scale. You are not walking through door three. That door cost billions and is currently guarded by Warren Buffett and the British oil company BP. This is the story of door number two, one full-service travel center, owned by you. Keep the other two doors in mind though, and keep an eye on that empty asphalt out back, because we'll come back to it later. A huge amount of the real money is hiding there. First, the land. A full-service travel center needs somewhere between 10 and 25 acres, and not just any acres. It needs frontage at an interstate exit, visible from the highway, with room for trucks to swing wide. Here's the part nobody tells you: that land barely exists. Travel Centers of America told the Securities and Exchange Commission, in an official filing, that growth in this industry is hindered by the limited availability of suitable locations along interstate highways. When a company writes that to regulators, it isn't marketing. It's a confession that the map is nearly full. Second, the construction. Feasibility work on modern travel centers puts the total project cost somewhere between $8 million and $25 million, and a flagship build can push past $20 million before the first gallon is sold. For perspective, petro-stopping centers told the SEC back in 1997 that a new full-size location cost $7 to $9.5 million, and that figure excluded the land. Travel Centers of America, in that same era, put the number at $6 to $10 million per site, and it cited those very capital costs as the wall keeping new competitors out. The price of admission, in other words, has been the moat since before you were shopping. Third, the tanks. Your fuel lives underground, in steel and fiberglass vessels governed by the Environmental Protection Agency, and installing 3 10,000 sig-gallon tanks has historically run somewhere between $76,000 and $100,000, and a serious diesel operation needs far more storage than that. Why does the federal government care so much about your tanks? Hold that thought, it gets expensive in a minute. Fourth, everything else: canopies, dispensers, kitchen equipment, shower rooms, point-of-sale systems, and the staff to run a building that never closes, 3 shifts a day, 365 days a year, because the freight does not observe holidays, and neither can you. A travel center juggles as many as 8 to 15 distinct revenue streams, and every one of them needs its own equipment, its own inventory, and its own payroll before it earns a dollar. Add it up and the price of admission to door number 2 is an 8-figure check for the privilege of selling a product that nets you cents. Now, here's where it gets dangerous, because the entry costs at least announce themselves. The traps do not. Trap number 1 is buried under the forecourt. Those underground storage tanks are the asset that leaks, and when a tank leaks, federal law makes you the cleanup crew. The EPA estimates the average tank cleanup at roughly $154,000, and if the fuel reaches groundwater, the bill climbs to somewhere between $100,000 and $1 million. This is not a rare event. Regulators have confirmed 564,767 tank releases across the country. States collectively spend more than $1 billion a year on cleanups, and the federal government is so certain the leaking will continue that it funds a permanent cleanup trust with a tax of 1/10 cent on every gallon of fuel sold in America. Buy an existing truck stop, and you may be buying 30-year-old tanks with the ground already wet. Trap number 2 isn't under the ground. It's inside the payment terminal. Professional drivers don't pay with cash or ordinary credit cards. They pay with fleet cards, and 2 companies, Comdata and Wix, control more than 80% of that market. Every fleet transaction routes through their rails, and the rails charge rent, somewhere between 8 and 10 cents a gallon, or 2 to 3% of the sale, skimmed before you see a dollar. Walk through one fill-up to feel it. Say the sign reads $2.50 a gallon, and your wholesale cost was $2.30, 20 cents of daylight, until the card network takes its 8 to 10, leaving you 12 to 15 cents a gallon for owning the tanks, the canopy, the staff, and the risk. The processor, who owns none of those things, earns almost as much per gallon as you do, and the big fleets negotiate on top of that. Comdata openly advertises cash price plus up to 40 cents a gallon off at TA and Petro locations, and 8 cents off at Pilot and Love's. Read that again. The discount networks sell your headline product back to your best customers at nearly what you paid for it, and if you want the trucks at all, you sign anyway. The discount is the tenant that never leaves, and unlike the leaking tank, it never even has the decency to hide underground. It sits in your contracts, renewing itself, priced by companies whose entire business is standing between you and your customers. So where does the money come from? Layer 1 is the diesel, and it earns exactly what you'd fear. Across the industry, retail fuel margins averaged just over 40 cents a gallon in 2025. That's the gross. After distribution, labor, and those card fees, the net lands somewhere between 3 and 13 cents a gallon. And on a fleet card fill, it's typically 12 to 15 cents even before your building costs a dime. Fuel pricing itself comes in 2 flavors worth knowing: cost plus, where the fleet pays your wholesale rack price, the terminal price you actually paid for the fuel, plus a small fixed fee, and retail minus, where they pay the sign price minus a negotiated discount. Either way, the diesel is bait. Layer 2 is everything inside the 4 walls, which the industry calls inside sales, and here the arithmetic flips. Fuel makes up 65% of a fuel retailer's sales dollars, but only 38.8% of its gross profit. The building earns the rest. Inside sales across American convenience retail hit $341.2 billion in 2025, and the crown jewel is food service, prepared food, the largest inside category at 28.5% of the total, carrying gross margins of 35 to 40%. A savings account pays more than a gallon of diesel. A chicken sandwich does not. Layer 3 is the shower. A truck stop shower costs somewhere between $12 and $17, 15 at Pilot, 14 at Love's, 15 to 17 at TA, for hot water and a clean towel, sold from a room that gets used a dozen times a day. And notice the machinery behind it. Buy 50 gallons of diesel and the shower is free. That's not generosity. That's the loss-leading fuel being used to lock a driver's entire day of spending into one building. Operators even track a number called the break-even pool margin, the fuel margin needed to cover all operating costs after inside profit, which is the industry quietly admitting which product actually pays the electric bill. So far, a travel center sounds like a machine that turns cheap diesel into expensive sandwiches. Now, here's the other side of the ledger, and the part of the property everyone ignores. The most profitable square footage on your lot might be the part with nothing on it. Remember that empty asphalt out back? Here's the payoff. Federal hours of service rules cap a trucker at 11 hours of driving inside a 14-hour window and then require 10 consecutive hours off duty. Not suggested. Required, tracked, and enforced. Which means somewhere between 3.3 and 3.6 million American truck drivers are legally ordered to park every single day, whether they want to or not. Now count the parking. The federal government's own survey found roughly 313,000 marked truck parking spaces in the entire country, about 40,000 at public rest areas and 273,000 at private truck stops. That works out to roughly one space for every 11 drivers. 98% of nearly 11,700 surveyed drivers reported trouble finding safe parking. Truck stop operators told the same survey their lots run past 100% capacity overnight, and 79% of them said they have no plans to add spaces. The American Transportation Research Institute ranked parking the number 2 crisis in all of trucking in 2023, ahead of driver pay. The shortage even has a law named after it, Jason's Law, for Jason Rivenberg, a driver murdered in 2009 while sleeping at an abandoned gas station because he couldn't find a safe place to stop. This is the strangest market in American business. Demand is created by federal law. Supply is frozen by geography and permitting, and the product is a painted rectangle. Reserved spots now rent for somewhere between $12 and $20 a night. Asphalt earning like a budget motel with no beds, no plumbing, and no housekeeping. Put the rectangle math on paper. Picture 100 reserved spots at $15, full every night, and the painted lines alone are producing over $500,000 a year. The industry has always known. The most famous truck stop in the country, Iowa 80 in Walcott, Iowa, family-owned since 1964 and billed as the largest on earth, advertises somewhere between 800 and 900 truck parking spaces, a lot the size of a stadium, and that lot, not the restaurant, is the boast. Now, scale that. Freight volume is projected to grow about 50% by 2050, and the parking supply is barely moving. But even the parking isn't the deepest layer of this business. To see the bottom, you need to watch one company die. The company is Flying J. J. Call founded it in Utah in 1968 and built it the way empires in this industry get built, one interchange at a time, until the J on the yellow sign meant something on every western highway. Call was a lifelong pilot. The company was literally named for flying. In 2003, the plane he was aboard went down, and he was gone. His daughter, Crystal Call Magalit, would inherit what came next. By 2008, Flying J ran roughly 250 travel centers, and the travel centers were doing their job. Trucks fueling, showers running, sandwiches selling. But the company had also become an oil company, with a refinery, a pipeline, and drilling assets, all fed by debt. Then the second half of 2008 happened. Crude oil fell from about $147 a barrel in July to somewhere between $30 and $40 by December. The credit markets froze solid, and a balance sheet built for expensive oil met a world of cheap oil and no loans. How does a company full of profitable truck stops end up in front of a bankruptcy judge? Like this. In December 2008, Flying J filed for Chapter 11, while its truck stops were still profitable. The autopsy was brutal and orderly. The Longhorn Pipeline went to Magellan for $340 million. The oil and gas assets went to El Paso for $103.5 million. The shuttered Bakersfield refinery drew a stalking horse bid of just $40 million. And the crown jewels, the travel centers themselves, went to the family's fiercest rival, Pilot, in a deal valued around $1.17 billion, with $515 million in cash, and the Call family keeping somewhere between 10 and 12% of the merged company. The merger closed in 2010, and the name survived only as the second word on somebody else's sign, Pilot Flying J. Here's the detail that should keep you up at night. The reorganization plan proposed paying senior creditors in full. The business generated enough value to cover its debts entirely. It just couldn't do it fast enough when the credit stopped. Flying J ran 250 travel centers that never stopped earning, and it still spent Christmas of 2008 in bankruptcy court. The truck stops didn't fail the company. The balance sheet failed the truck stops. Which brings us back to the question from the beginning. Why did Warren Buffett want this business? Because underneath the diesel, the sandwiches, and the showers, A truck stop is a piece of irreplaceable interstate real estate wrapped in a legal moat. Moat number 1. Federal law bans commercial fuel and food sales at interstate rest areas, and the truck stop industry's own trade association lobbies hard to keep that ban alive, meaning the government itself guarantees that the only place to build a competitor is the same scarce exit ramp land the SEC filings admit barely exists. Moat number 2 is the one you just watched. 11 mandated hours of rest chasing one space per 11 drivers. Assets like that don't stay family-owned. Jim Haslam paid $6,000 for a single Virginia gas station in 1958 and grew it into pilot. Berkshire Hathaway bought 38.6% of it in 2017 for about $2.76 billion, another 41.4% in January 2023 for roughly $8.2 billion, a deal valuing the company near $19.8 billion, and the final 20% in January 2024 for $2.6 billion. Call it $13.6 billion, all in, for a company moving around $42 billion a year across more than 750 locations. 4 months after Buffett took control, BP paid $1.3 billion for TA and its roughly 300 sites. And notice how the giants are actually measured, not in stores, in parking. Pilot holds about 75,000 spaces, TA about 51,000, Love's about 50,000 across its 69 stores. The scoreboard of this industry is counted in painted rectangles. Meanwhile, Buc-ee's, with 56 enormous stores, bans 18-wheelers entirely and keeps only the high-margin inside business, the exception that confirms every rule you've just heard. The pumps were never the asset. The exit ramp is the asset. Occupancy of the fuel lane is not the same thing as income. Ownership of the corner is. Put real numbers on one imaginary year. Say you own that mid-size independent travel center, and say the feasibility math holds. You need around 300,000 gallons of diesel a month, plus roughly $300,000 a month in non-fuel sales just to cover expenses and debt. In a good year, freight is strong, the lanes stay full, and margins hold near that 40-cent industry average. Call it $120,000 a month in fuel gross before the inside store, the showers, and a paid parking program stack their profit on top. The pool margin covers the building with room to spare, and the year ends comfortably in the black. Great year, now run the bad one. A freight recession thins the traffic. Say gallons slip by a tenth, and price wars with the chain down the highway squeeze your margin toward 25 cents, while more of your remaining volume shifts onto deep discount fleet cards. Remember the break-even pool margin, the fuel margin you need after inside profit just to keep the lights on. In the bad year, you're operating below it for months at a time, and every fixed cost, insurance, payroll, tank compliance, debt service, arrives anyway, on schedule, indifferent. Rough year. Same building, same pumps, same coffee. Run both scenarios side by side, and the swing between them lands somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million. The difference wasn't anything you controlled. It was the freight market, the credit market, and a number on a sign. Flying J learned that lesson with 250 locations. You'd be learning it with one. So picture it one last time. 2 in the morning, the sodium lights, the chrome grills at the pumps, 100 trucks asleep in their rows behind the building. You thought the glow was the business, the fuel, the food, the neon, but the drivers aren't there for the glow. They're there because a federal clock ran out and yours was the only rectangle of asphalt left. The diesel was never really the product. The product was the one legal place to stop. And the people who understood that stopped selling fuel and started collecting exits.